Find out what's driving the trend. We speak with Dr. Amina Mirhom for a deep dive on all your questions.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Welcome to NTD. I'm Kevin Hogan in for Carrie.
And today is Tuesday, April 29th. We'll be starting off this morning with special coverage of President Trump's first 100 days of his second term.
He has been very busy. That's 139 executive orders he's passed this year, according to the Federal Register.
Oh, that is a lot. And that is, in fact, 3 times more than President Biden in the same amount of time in his administration.
Yeah, and 100 more than Trump did the first time around at this point.
Right. And we are seeing a lot of changes, as you said already. The Wall Street Journal just reporting that illegal border crossings are the lowest in 60 years.
President Trump has made a point of sealing up the border. All right, so time for a timeline. Earlier, I joined NTD's Fiona G for a special segment on the biggest moments of Trump's first 100 days of this term.
We are here to break down the first 100 days of President Donald Trump's second presidency. But Kevin, that's no small task.
You got that right. And President Trump wasted no time in bringing his vision for America through his policy plan, Fiona.
That's right. And it seems like this administration, it's been dominating those headlines every single day.
Yes, absolutely. So we've tried our best to narrow it down to the most consequential moments in the beginning of this administration. And it starts with immigration. That was something so important to President Trump, especially saw that on the campaign trail. Right here on day one, President Trump set into motion the designation of Mexican cartels as terrorists.
That's right. In fact, on just the first day alone, President Trump signs 26 executive orders showing that he's serious about this issue.
Yeah, and Fiona, what we're looking at are drugs and guns seized by cartels. And I mean, Senator Tom Cotton says that cartels have killed more Americans than any terrorist organization in history.
Yeah, so if we look up there, January 20th, President Trump signs the Securing Our Borders Act. What does that do? That calls for the wall to be built. That calls for unauthorized individuals to not be allowed into the country, and for any of them in the country to be detained and then deported.
Yeah, I mean, Trump calls this an invasion, Fiona.
That's right. And then we go, same thing, January 20th, President Trump starts to try and end birthright citizenship. That means even if you're born on U.S. soil, you might not end up a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, and this is a huge shift because there's a long-standing held American belief that if you're born here, you're an American citizen.
That's right. And then he also creates DOGE. That's, of course, the Department of Government Efficiency. Initially, it was just to help him with his goals of government efficiency as well as technology modernization.
Yes, that's right. And so Elon Musk is going to be stepping back. So we'll see what happens with DOGE. But we move up to day 5, and we have a very significant confirmation at this point.
That's right. Pete Hegseth confirmed as Secretary of Defense.
Yes, there were some questions, though, surrounding his background, but he ultimately got that Senate confirmation vote to lead the largest agency in the country, the one that protects us. We're going back to immigration now, again, a big theme in this administration.
That's right, Kevin. Day 10, President Donald Trump signs the Laken-Riley Act, which aims to protect Americans from violent illegal criminals inside the country.
Yes, and that's nearly 60 Democrats in Congress who voted for this, so this got bipartisan support. It's a major legislative win for President Trump, his first bill signed. Take a look at what Laken-Riley's mother said.
There's no amount of change that will ever bring back our precious Laken. Our hope moving forward is that her life saves lives. We're so thankful that her passion for helping others and her legacy for doing good in the name of Jesus Christ will carry on. Thank you.
It's just so sad, Fiona, what happened to Laken-Riley. I mean, a 22-year-old college student murdered while on a jog at the University of Georgia campus.
Absolutely. It was a devastating case. The headlines every day. Very, very sad. We're
Yes.
going to move on now to date 15, Kevin.
Yeah, so DOGE head Elon Musk says of USAID that they're shutting it down. He says that this agency is full of corruption and they cut 83% of the contracts.
Now, there were credible allegations here that this money was going to terrorists and that these NGOs, they were hiding their identities, they were overcharging the U.S., and that they were not rooting out corruption.
Yeah, but not without pushback. Workers went on strike. There were protests. The courts had to come in. Supreme Court eventually said, hey, you got to pay those $2 billion in contracts.
That's
When
right.
we move up to day 24, we got some key confirmations questions here. Two former Democrats that you see right here. Tulsi Gabbard was confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence.
Now, she was a little controversial, actually, Kevin, because of a previous comment she had made where she said that it was U.S., quote, hostility that pushed Russia's annexation of Crimea.
Yeah, well, and here you have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He was confirmed Health and Human Services Secretary. Again, controversy surrounding him because he is very big on vaccine safety. Not everyone agrees with his views.
But now his goal is to make America healthy again, the MAHA movement, as we've been seeing.
There you go.
So there you go. Two interesting cabinet picks that were confirmed. Mostly interesting because they were former Democrats, but of course there were a lot of other secretaries that were confirmed as well.
Yeah, that's right. You see immigration featuring big here, but there's probably something that we need to talk about, and that is the war in Europe. And President Trump has made a point at ending this war. And here you see Ukrainian President Zelensky visiting the White House. Here's the two of them in the Oval Office, Fiona.
Kevin, that February 28th, heated exchange.
Yes, that's right. So take a look at what happened on that day.
Disrespectful to the country, this country, that's
with
back
all
to
respect to
you,
you,
far more than a lot of people said
wearing
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once this
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting, have
today.
you said thank
Even
you?
today.
Nothing yet, but President Trump has been trying to fast track a peace deal here.
That's right, and February 28th as well, we see record low border crossings. In the month of February, crossings lowered to just under 12,000.
Yes, that's a huge reversal from what we saw under the Biden administration when that peak in December 2023 saw about 300,000 illegal crossings.
That's right, and we're going to move on day 47 through 48, Kevin.
Yeah, so we're back to academia, Fiona, right? And this is when President Trump defunded Columbia University, cutting $400 million in grants and other monies to the school over an alleged failure to protect students from anti-Semitism.
Now, those pro-Palestinian protests, they made headlines everywhere, Kevin. We even saw reports of Jewish students fleeing campus because they feared for their safety. Now, President Trump, he's taken a hardline stance on this issue.
Oh, Fiona, that is right. And the very next day, Khalil Mahmoud, he was arrested. He's one of the organizers of these protest encampments. And the judges first said, no, you can't deport him. But then later on, they said that he could. So again, immigration featuring really big. We're coming up to the halfway mark.
That's right. Day 50, halfway through 100 days. 32,000 plus are ICE arrests, Kevin.
Oh, absolutely. To give you some context, on average, those numbers mean that Trump is moving 7 times faster than the last fiscal year of the Biden administration to remove those that are deemed to be public safety or national security threats.
That's right. And it's important to note here that these arrests were made at large, which means they were made in the public, in the workplace, not in jails.
Yeah.
And we're going to move on day 53 now. President Trump, he meets with NATO chief Mark Rutte. Rutte actually praises President Trump's diplomacy here, saying that he's partially the reason why the EU has agreed to invest over 800 billion euros into defense in the upcoming years.
Yeah, and something important to note is that, Fiona, remember when Trump said that the United States would not defend NATO countries if they don't meet their financial obligations.
Yeah, that's right, Kevin. And we're going to move on day 54 through 55.
Okay, so this is the Alien Enemies Act that President Trump invoked, in which over 200 members of the people who the Trump administration deemed to be members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua and the notorious street gang MS-13 were removed from this country, deemed public safety threats.
And once again, Kevin, here, it shows that President Trump is serious about this because this act is usually used in times of war. But of course, the U.S. is not at war right now.
Yes, and so the ACLU, they spoke up, and then the Trump administration was blocked from using this law. And the Supreme Court stepped in and said, nope, you cannot use this to deport illegal immigrants.
All right, so we're at day 55 right now, just a little over the halfway point of 100 days. President Trump has done a lot to curb illegal immigration and to make promises made, promises kept, right?
Well, that's right, and that's what they say. And now, so there were some hiccups along the way, and we come to the signal leak. That is a big accident in which Defense Secretary Hegseth was on a call, and a journalist was accidentally put on there, and Hegseth was talking about actual details for the attack on the terrorist Houthis in Yemen. So that is a big hiccup that we have to put a light on.
That's right. So that signal chat, Representative Jason Crow actually said this would have been grounds for resignation from Secretary Hegseth because he said that if terrorists had gotten their hands on that information, it could have put the lives of American service members at risk.
Yes, right. So we're coming up to day 61. This is when Colombia is back in the picture.
That's right. Colombia concedes to President Trump's demand. However, this is still an ongoing talk. It's not finalized just yet.
Yeah, and then a couple of days later, you see Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem in El Salvador at CCOT, the terrorist confinement center. And behind her are those, again, people deemed to be Tren de Aragua, MS-13 members. And she's sending a message saying, hey, if anyone wants to come to the United States and harm Americans, that could be their future.
And it's also highlighting a growing collaboration between the U.S. and El Salvador. Very interesting dynamic there.
Okay, so now we fast forward up to day 73, the big one.
The big one, Kevin, Liberation Day, according to President Donald Trump. That's the day he put this across the board 10% tariff on a bunch of countries, and it went all the way up to 34% for China, although, Kevin, that number, as we know, has gone up now.
Yeah, and see that long list here. Trump's trying to use that as leverage. He's saying that America's getting the short end of the stick in these trade deals, and it's harming workers and companies. But here's what Trump said on that day.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
Okay, so not long after that, day 79, that's when China retaliated. Because again, there's these tit-for-tat tariffs. U.S. is putting 145% tariffs on Chinese exports. China, 125% on American goods.
Although President Trump has said here that if China comes to the negotiating table, these tariffs will come down significantly, although they will not go down to zero.
Yeah, and there's still more to that story, too. I mean, it goes on.
That's right. 75 nations, April 16th, according to the White House, 75 nations had already come to the negotiating table over these tariffs.
Yeah, that's right. Again, President Trump says that it's a national emergency, these trade deficits, and at one point, 15 countries were already in active negotiations. And backing up to academia again, on April 14th, that's when Harvard was defunded.
That's right. A $2.2 billion federal government funding frozen by the Trump administration because Harvard said it will not follow the Trump administration's demands.
Yeah, Fiona, Trump wants Harvard to end the DEI hires, so you got to have merit-based admissions and hires and so on.
That's right. All right, we move on to our last point here. Day 97, President Trump, he meets with President Vladimir Zelensky at the Vatican before Pope Francis's funeral.
Yes, absolutely. Again, these two meeting several times in order to bring the war in Ukraine to an end. However, it has not proved fruitful, at least at this point in time.
Yeah, that's right. Trump has said that a deal would involve Russia getting Crimea, although Ukraine has said ceding Crimea is a red line for the country.
Yeah, and beyond that, it's even legal experts say that that wouldn't even be law. Like, that would just be completely against the law. Because Putin took it by force. Remember those little green men that just gobbled up the government in Crimea?
That's right. All right, there we go. Day 97. We're at the end of President Trump's 100 days back in office. He's done a lot on illegal immigration, tariffs, DOGE, the border. A lot has been done.
Yes, that's exactly right. So what you just saw was a snapshot, the summary of the beginning of Trump's second term, and we're going to have more 100-day coverage for you coming up.
Reducing chronic illness and finding the root causes of America's escalating health crisis. One of the key messages from President Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Make America Healthy Again initiative.
Let's look at what has been accomplished in the administration's first 100 days when it comes to health. NTD's David Lamb reports.
From Make America Great Again came Make America Healthy Again.
Preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
During President Trump's second term at the White House, he did not hesitate in making changes. On February 13, Brooke Rollins was sworn in as Secretary of Agriculture. The same day, RFK Jr. became Secretary of the Health and Human Services and Chair of the MAHA Commission, with a 100-day goal: identify and describe childhood chronic disease in America compared to other countries.
We need somebody who is willing to come in and has the spine and the guts and the strength to challenge orthodoxies, to stand in the way of vested interests.
Towards the end of the first 100 days, April had landmark events. On April 3rd, MAHA held its first public event with HHS and USDA on site at a Virginia school campus.
A lot of these programs that affect public nutrition and nutrition for kids are joint collaborations between USDA and HHS. And President Trump asked us to end the chronic disease epidemic, and it takes this collaboration. And we're all working together to make sure that that happens.
It's the first of many stops for Secretary Kennedy and myself over the next 4 years as we work to make America healthy again.
April 22nd, HHS and FDA make a major announcement.
Today, the FDA is taking action to remove petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply and from medications. For the last 50 years, American children have increasingly been living in a toxic soup of synthetic chemicals. The scientific community has conducted a number of studies raising concerns about the correlation between petroleum-based synthetic dyes and several health conditions.
McCary said the agency would begin the process to revoke authorization for 2 synthetic food colorings, Citrus Red No. 2 and Orange B, within the coming months. They'll also work with industry to eliminate 6 remaining synthetic dyes from the food supply by the end of 2026.
When my uncle was president, 3% of American kids had chronic disease. Today, it's around 60%. And these are a broad category, the ones that Marty mentioned, like ADHD, the neurological disorders, ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, and autism.
To replace the dyes, they plan to authorize 4 new natural color additives in the coming weeks, while also accelerating the review and approval of others.
For companies that are currently using petroleum-based red dye, try watermelon juice.
On the same day, the USDA also applauded the dairy industry, IDFA, for pledging to remove artificial colors from national school lunch programs. According to a 2023 report by the federal government, nearly 70% of U.S. adults are either overweight or obese. Kennedy has also urged states to prohibit the use of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, also known as food stamps, to purchase food with little nutritional value. Indiana and Arkansas became the first states to ask the USDA to exclude soda and candies from food stamp purchases. A handful of other states are also moving in that direction. Other approaches might include taxing soda or improving nutrition in school lunches. Senator Bernie Sanders has suggested banning television ads for unhealthy foods targeting children. The USDA and HHS also announced a review of dietary guidelines and messaging for Americans in March. They plan to release new guidelines before the end of this year. Investigating the causes of autism is another focus for MAHA, a diagnosis that is growing. New CDC data found it affects 1 in 31 children in the United States, up from 1 in 36 in 2020 and 1 in 150 in 2000. The director of the National Institutes of Health said they'd like to draw data from medical records from Americans. The NIH director hopes to have a timeline within a year where the agency would start to put out preliminary results.
David Lamb, NTD News.
And stay with us. Right after the break, we'll have a deep dive on the MAHA movement.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
We come from a long line of farmers, and there's a sense of pride with being part of these multi-generational businesses. But there's also a significant amount of pressure. My senior year of high school, my dad made the decision that this world no longer needed him in it. I don't know if he was overwhelmed by the bills and checks that weren't going to be coming in because of the strawberries dying off, but it breaks my heart that my dad made a permanent decision for a temporary issue. Don't feel like you have to go through it alone.
Farmers have to take care of their physical and their mental health, because what's a farm without a farmer?
The mornings, that's my time. Watching the sun come up, I can have a cup of coffee and exercise if I want to. It helps me start the day with a sense of gratitude.
Yay!
Every day is a new opportunity. Don't forget to check in on yourself. Love, your mind.
We said we'd never break the 3-second rule. Never do that. And never become a minivan mom.
Hey, Chris.
As parents, we say never a lot, but never happens. So when you say you'd never leave your child in a hot car, know it can happen. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
Make America healthy again. With the stroke of a pen, this administration propelled this movement forward as President Trump signed one of more than 130 executive orders in his first 100 days in office. The mission is clear. The path to get there is still unfolding. MAHA has been a force within the MAGA movement, and today we take a look back at the promises, actions, and obstacles it's faced. Tracking it all with us today is Dr. James Thorpe, a board-certified obstetrician, gynecologist, and maternal fetal medicine physician. Good to have you with us this morning, Dr. Thorpe.
Thank you very much for having me on, Stephanie.
All right, let's get into it. On the campaign trail, Trump promised to establish a presidential commission to investigate the root causes of chronic diseases, and especially of childhood illnesses, with a focus on diet, toxins, and corporate influence. 2 weeks ago, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. promised speedy results in seeking the cause of the rise in childhood autism. Here he is now.
And clearly there are industries. This is coming from an environmental toxin. And somebody made a profit by putting that environmental toxin into our air, our water, our medicines, our food. And it's to their benefit to say, oh, to normalize it. To say, oh, this is all normal, it's always been here. But that's not good for our country, and it's not good for the press to not be more inquisitive, to not be more skeptical. And within 3 weeks, and probably we're hoping in 2 weeks, we're going to announce a series of new studies to identify precisely what the environmental toxins are that are causing it. This has not been done before, and we're going to do it in a thorough and comprehensive way, and we're going to get back to with an answer to the American people very, very quickly.
2 or 3 weeks, that is an extraordinary turnaround time. Dr. Thorpe, what methods could the department be using to achieve these results, and what might be different this time if it's using current data?
Well, I have a lot of mixed feelings about where we've gone in the last 100 days. In my opinion, it's been rather a dismal failure. Listen, we don't need new studies. Marty Makary, head of the FDA, unfortunately comes from a captured institution. He comes from Johns Hopkins University, that arguably is the most captured and corrupt pharmaceutically industry kleptocratic institution, also captured by the government, of any other university or medical center in the world. Listen, in 2022, they received $1.3 billion. So we don't need more monies and more studies. Marty Macri should have removed the lethal and the most injurious and lethal vaccine ever introduced to the population, the COVID-19 vaccine, on day one. That's what he has the authority to do. That's what he should have done. Yet he's going after these minor distractors like food dyes.
Interesting that you point to that, because we haven't seen a lot of action yet on vaccines, although that was in the spotlight a lot during RFK Jr.'s procession into this role that he's in now on the campaign trail. But this actually dovetails in nicely with the next question about trust in public health institutions and healthcare providers. During COVID, of course, that went down due to, as seen in study after study and through the COVID pandemic. This administration is vowing to bring it back. You've cast some shadow on your analysis of whether that's possible. What do you think it will take to do that, aside from what you've said about the COVID vaccine?
There will be no trust restored in the medical organizations. They're corrupt to the core. They've been captured by the government. Every thread of the fabric of our society has been brainwashed and bribed with trillions of dollars supporting and pushing the corrupt, kleptocratic vaccine industry. Listen, we don't need new studies. Mawson and Jacob published just a study in a peer-reviewed medical journal just in January of this year. A very legitimate study. This was from Florida, looking at over 45,000 nine-year-old children, comparing the vaccinated with the unvaccinated. And the results were absolutely stunning. And there were probably 200 other studies that have already been done. The study by Mawson and Jacob showed an almost four-fold increase in neurological developmental delays in 9-year-olds from the Medicaid program in Florida. We're looking at almost a 3-fold increase in autism spectrum disorder, a 2.8-fold increase in hyperkinetic syndrome, a 3.5-fold increase in epilepsy or seizure, 6.8-fold increase in learning disabilities, a 5.2-fold increase in encephalopathies, a 6.2-fold increase in tic disorders. At least one of these newborn neurological disorders is devastating for a family. And let's not forget that the Pfizer data themselves and the government data of VAERS have shown beyond a shadow of a doubt that the COVID-19 vaccine, as early as 2021, Pfizer documented that it was the deadliest, most injurious vaccine ever released to the public. This was known on February 28th, 2021, in the Pfizer post-market analysis. This vaccine is lethal. It's not fit for human use. It should have been removed from the market in December of 2020. And Marty Macri is nothing more than a puppet for the governmental, kleptocratic, dysfunctional pushing of vaccines. He's going after food dyes. That's ridiculous.
Dr. Thorpe, the studies that you've mentioned do sound alarming. Do they point to causality? Is there anything that we can draw on or anticipate coming from these studies if they are used to examine what RFK Jr. has called environmental toxins that he believes could be a main driving force behind this phenomenon, especially regards to autism?
Listen, red dyes and Fruit Loops, throw them aside for the time being, okay? If you're gonna, make some money and rob a bank, you go to the bank because that's where the money is, right? Okay? Going after all of this other, minutia that might have an effect is not what we need to do. We need to acknowledge that the COVID-19 vaccine was a dismal failure, and it has negative efficacy. It increases the risk of death. Causality, yes. Part of causality is a temporal relationship, and that's one of the main public health features of the criteria for causality. When you have, in just 10 weeks, you have 42,086 injuries in just 10 weeks of rollout from the Pfizer vaccine. And of those 42,086 injuries, you have 1,223 deaths, the vast majority occurring in healthy individuals within 48 hours of the vaccine. That's causality. That's enough public health criteria for causality. And one more important issue of causality. Causality has never, ever been an issue of removing a vaccine. I'm in practice now for 45 years. When I was a medical student in 1976, the swine flu vaccine rolled out millions, tens of millions of doses of swine flu vaccine. There were 26 deaths. Causality was never an issue there of proving causality. It was immediately removed from the market. Immediately. There doesn't have to be studies. More studies proving lethality. This is a lethal vaccine, the most injurious, the highest injure to kill ratio of any other medicine or procedure. Actually, in the history of medicine, it's the highest injure to kill ratio in the history of warfare. This is not fit for human consumption. It should have been removed, and it's being pushed by the corrupt pharmaceutical government medical complex. In the turn of the century, we had the rotavirus vaccine for young children. You may recall that. There were no deaths. There were a spate of cases of minor bowel complications called intussusception. That drug was ripped off the market. And now we have 20 years later, and we have the deadliest, most injurious vaccine ever pushed on the American people. And the American people know it. The uptake of the vaccine last year was dismal.
Dr. Thorpe, it sounds like a key move for you to reinstill trust in these institutions would be to, as you've said, remove the COVID-19 vaccine. Another campaign promise to try to forge that trust on the campaign trail was to reform federal health agencies to prioritize transparency, open source data, and gold standard research that would be free from pharmaceutical industry conflicts. And I do want to ask you, I'm going to play a soundbite, but after that I want to ask you about if you're seeing any reactions to the current moves from the pharmaceutical industry, which, as you've also just mentioned, may, is a strong lobbying group in many respects. But first up, we're going to see Marty Makary, as you've mentioned, talking about food dyes and his stance on it.
Today, the FDA is taking action to remove petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply and from medications. For the last 50 years, American children have increasingly been living in a toxic soup of synthetic chemicals. The scientific community has conducted a number of studies raising concerns about the correlation between petroleum-based synthetic dyes and several health conditions, such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, obesity, diabetes, insulin resistance, cancer, genomic disruption, GI issues, as I've seen in the hospital, and allergic reactions.
Though you stated your position on whether it's effective or not as a way to tackle chronic disease, this is the latest move, or one of the latest moves of the MAHA drive in the administration. Are you seeing any responses from the pharmaceutical industry?
No, I see them digging their heels in, bribing more people, putting more pressure on the politicians to not change anything.
Okay, and I guess that might be expected. Now, some critics argue that MAHA's anti-corporate rhetoric masks a deregulatory pro-industry agenda, with concern that the administration could try to dismantle the health agencies and promote more individualized, market-driven solutions. That's a criticism for some people. The Department of Health and Human Services is downsizing from 82,000 to 62,000 employees, and it cut 10,000 full-time positions just in March, although it did reinstate 2,000. This, like other recent staff cuts, has drawn some criticism with concern over potential for diminishing quality in services. What's your take on it?
Yeah, my take is this is dancing around nothing. This is a bunch of gobbledygook, which is meaningless. There's so much corruption in the medical organizations. If I may give you an example, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine are really the three organizations that really, for all intents and purposes, dictate all the care around the world globally of pregnant women. They were bought off and captured in early 2021. And this has been proven by my research team by a Freedom of Information Act request. So these three organizations were bought off. They signed a secretive agreement, cooperative care agreement, to push the exact harsh, draconian COVID-19 narratives of the HHS, pushing the COVID-19 vaccine even in the most vulnerable patients, pregnant women. They colluded, they conspired, they illegally signed this, and they agreed to push it in their employees and in their patients and wouldn't reveal that they signed it. And if they didn't stick with the exact draconian narratives, they would have to pay the money back. That's proof. This is proven. So now they sent out a letter to 60,000 OBGYN doctors on September 27th, 2021, saying that if you don't follow the draconian procedures and if you don't push the vaccine in pregnant women, we will destroy your career, we'll remove your license, and we'll take away your accreditation, your subspecialty board certifications. They've not changed that stance. They're pushing it to this very...
Dr. Thorpe, unfortunately, that's all we have time for. There's so much to dig into here, and we really appreciate your expertise and coming on so early this morning to speak with us about it. Thank you so much again.
Thanks for having me on.
Coming up, what will the GOP's new budget look like and what federal spending is on the chopping block? More details will come out over the next week as lawmakers start marking up the budget changes.
Just a few months ago, Conservatives had a 20-point lead in Canadian polls, but Liberals pull off a major comeback to win the election. Prime Minister Mark Carney shares his plans. That coverage for you in a minute.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how sketch is me? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You didn't turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, Backpack Kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutVaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
There is a road laid out for me.
Boxes everywhere. And this is gonna be Addie's room.
I am blind.
You're really gonna like it.
I hope so. Yeah.
I know this road is there for me.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
Ways down by the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
I got this.
I know this road is there for me.
Okay.
If I'm really free, take me down to the river and wash me.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out, because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear. Call me Papa Bear, because I'm grilling up dinner. Do you get it?
Yes, good job.
So, what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha, 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 ha.
See, Smokey thinks I'm funny.
Lawmakers are back in Washington, and Republicans are hitting the ground running on big budget changes.
What will the new budget look like, and what federal spending is on the chopping block? NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
Today, lawmakers are getting down into the details on a new federal budget. House Speaker Mike Johnson met with President Trump and 5 other budget leaders in Congress on Monday to talk strategy.
We're still on our schedule. I think we can meet it. As you know, we have 7 committees marking up this week, 4 next, the following week, and then that third week. I believe we can pass it by Memorial Day. I do. Yep.
Border security and immigration policy are the biggest focus. Lawmakers have approved $200 billion to increase spending in these areas. Defense spending will increase by around $100 billion, with a strong focus on the Navy and shipbuilding to deter China's aggression in the Pacific Ocean and the South China Sea. Meanwhile, Republicans aim to cut at least $2 trillion from federal spending over the next decade. Committee meetings start this week, first in the House Armed Services and Education Workforce committees.
In my particular budget area, Department of Education and Labor, those issues, we're looking at some significant cuts that will, in fact, I think, help our educational policy moving forward.
Democrats protested the planned budget changes with a sit-in on the Capitol steps over the weekend. They've continued to warn against cuts to Medicaid.
They're going to hurt children, hurt families, hurt seniors, hurt people with disabilities, close hospitals, shut down nursing homes, and people will die. This is a matter of life and death.
Though Republicans have vowed not to kick off eligible Medicaid recipients and to only cut fraud and abuse from the program. Tax policy is up for change, too. The GOP plans to extend Trump's 2017 tax cuts and make a new law to prevent tax collection on tips and Social Security. Once the budget markups are complete, lawmakers will vote on one final bill in both the House and the Senate. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Canada goes to the polls. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberals retained power in the country's election yesterday. NTD's Daniel Monahan breaks down the results.
Though victorious, the Liberal Party could fall short of the 172 seats needed for a majority in the 343-seat House of Commons. With 98% of polls reporting, the Liberals were leading or elected in 167 electoral districts, followed by the Conservatives with 145, and 3 other parties taking 31 seats. Minority governments in Canada rarely last longer than 2.5 years. In a victory speech, Prime Minister Carney said Canada is at a turning point.
Our old relationship with the United States, a relationship based on steadily increasing integration, is over.
Carney says Canada is over the shock of what he called the American betrayal, but warned Canadians not to forget the lessons.
When I sit down with President Trump, it will be to discuss the future economic and security relationship between two sovereign nations.
Carney promised a firm stance on U.S. tariffs and pledged to invest billions to reduce Canada's economic dependence on its southern neighbor. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre conceded defeat to Carney's Liberals. Despite losing the election, Poilievre says Conservatives have much to celebrate.
We've gained well over 20 seats. We got the highest share of vote our party has received since 1988.
Poilievre says Conservatives will hold the new government to account and propose better alternatives.
We will always put Canada first as we stare down tariffs and other irresponsible threats from President Trump.
And says Conservatives will work with the Prime Minister and all parties with the common goal of defending Canada's interests.
And getting a new trade deal that puts these tariffs behind us while protecting our sovereignty and the Canadian people.
The result capped a notable comeback for the Liberals. They were 20 percentage points behind in the polls in January before former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced he was quitting, and President Trump started proposing tariffs and suggesting Canada should become the 51st American state. Trump's threats ignited a wave of patriotism that swelled support for Carney, a political newcomer who previously led two G7 central banks. Carney has emphasized that his experience handling economic issues makes him the best leader to deal with Trump, while Poilievre tapped into concerns about the cost of living, crime, and a housing crisis. Trump, in a social media post on Monday, reiterated his call for Canada to become the 51st state, saying it would greatly benefit both economically and from a security standpoint. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
You heard it earlier, autism diagnoses are on the rise. That's according to the CDC. And HHS Secretary RFK Jr. wants to find out what's driving the trend.
We speak with a board-certified psychiatrist for a deep dive on all your questions coming up.
As we naturally age, many people are getting zero amount of this incredible and unique substance. That's when we start seeing an impact in our joints, skin, nails, and even our digestion.
People ask me, Dr. X, what is the #1 supplement I should be taking? My answer is multi-collagen protein.
People's reactions to me, people were like, what are you doing? What is going on? You look amazing. You have a glow about you.
What makes Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen stand out from other brands? 10 types of collagen. It's grass-fed, pasture-raised with vitamin C and probiotics. It's proven to reduce joint discomfort rapidly, continuously, and persistently. It improves the appearance of crow's feet after 4 weeks and improves skin tone after 8 weeks. And it promotes hair thickness, growth, and a reduction in hair breakage.
It has transformed everything from my hair. Like, my hair was starting to kind of just, come out, and I don't have that anymore. My skin feels amazing.
Call the number on your screen and find out how to get a free bottle when you order, plus free shipping and our 30-day money-back guarantee. And as a bonus, we will include Dr. Josh Axe and Jordan Rubin's revolutionary book, Multi-Collagen Makeover, free with your order, plus free shipping and free returns.
I have implicit trust in Dr. Axe because the plan worked. I'm living proof of it.
This is the collagen protein that is backed by clinical studies. It's what my family uses, it's what I use, and I know you're gonna benefit in a big way as well.
Love the results or get your money back. This special TV offer is not available in stores. Call the number on your screen or go online now.
Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes. Days Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Days Enzyme Fermented Coffee.
If you love them enough to crawl into a play place to get them to come down, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says autism is an epidemic that's being driven by environmental toxins, and he's promised to study the causes with results forecast for September.
And joining us in studio now is board-certified psychiatrist and assistant professor at Columbia University, Dr. Mina Merhome. Dr. Merhome, thanks for coming with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you in this morning. RFK Jr. has said autism destroys families. It's an individual tragedy. Let's lay out the scope. I mean, what really is autism?
Yeah, great question. And I think the comments from RFK Jr. were reflecting more of folks who are really struggling on the lower end of the spectrum. Whenever we talk about autism, we're talking about a spectrum of disorders. You can have folks who are struggling with communication, verbal skills, social skills in this large area, all the way from being nonverbal and needing 24-hour support, all the way to a higher functioning where you can have really fulfilling, independent lives. So that's kind of the difference that we see. But nonetheless, it has been a difficult, challenging thing for families to deal with as well.
Yeah, and I've been reading on this. According to the University of Rochester Medical Center, you really do have to be patient. A family has to be patient when handling someone who does have that diagnosis. And now, further, when we look ahead, we talk about the hope. Is there hope for this? I mean, because there are a lot of research studies being done right now.
There certainly is, and especially now, I think this is a moment where there is this magnifying glass that's being put onto this diagnosis for the 5.4 million people living with it in America. That's being more humanized. April is actually Autism Acceptance Month. There's more research coming in to say, well, we know there is a genetic component. We know there are environmental components. We know there are some things that are modifiable that we can look at. And the more we can study this, the more effectively we can find therapies that are effective. Although we have some things now that with early intervention go a long way for folks with autism.
And I do want to get into that, but it's taking a step back. There may be folks out there who are wondering, does my child potentially have autism? What are some of the signs, early warning signs to watch out for?
Early warning signs are key. This is one of the most important things when it comes to autism is we can reliably diagnose it by about age 2. There are tools that we use, a checklist where we look at verbal communication, social interaction, if there's a delay in speech. These are all things that we're looking at in the first 1 to 2 years of life. And the earlier we can have this intervention made, the more we can implement those early therapies, speech therapy, ABA therapy, that can help the child develop. But if I'm seeing a child who is startled by slight noises, who has a hyperfixation on some routines, has difficulty interacting with others, difficulty with eye contact, these are all signs that I want to be aware of in a young child.
And Harvard studies show that back in 2000, there were only maybe 6 or 7 people out of 1,000 with ASD, but now that's jumped up to over 16 per 1,000 in 2014. So, I mean, you're free to comment on that, or just tell us what are the most important steps after receiving that diagnosis for the family.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of discussion over the past couple of weeks as why are we seeing 1 in 36 children now with this diagnosis? Why are we seeing such an uptick over the past couple of decades? And there are a couple of reasons for that. One, in my lifetime, over my training, diagnostic procedures have gotten much better. Awareness. There wasn't a time maybe a decade ago where I'd be in a channel discussing autism awareness. So our screening, our focus on early diagnosis, detection, and the resources that go into that also have come a long way. And that's part of the reason why we've been able to make more of these diagnoses early, where at times we could have just missed this person. This is somebody maybe when I was in class with a young person, they could have been just thought of as, oh, this is a quiet person or someone more disruptive. We would have missed those diagnoses.
And there's been progress on screening and diagnosis, but there's also been progress and developments in terms of treatments. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, absolutely. So treatment, just like the disorder itself is multifactorial with where it comes from, treatment also is multifactorial, and the combination between therapy and medications. The gold standard therapy is called ABA, or Applied Behavioral Analysis, And that works on communication skills, verbal communication, social interaction. And there are some medications as well that can be used whenever there is out of control aggression in a young person. Medications like risperidone and Abilify, we can use those to effectively help the person cope better.
Yes, and Dr. Mahone, I think it's really important to point out that some people with autism, they want more affection. Yes. Some are, you have to be careful. You shouldn't do that because they might react a certain way. So how do you cater your approach? That's exactly key, Kevin. The idea here is this is individualized, right? The individual approach to a person with autism, it's not a one-size-fits-all. For some folks, they like a particular kind of affection, just like you and I, right? We have a particular love language, if you will. So a person with autism, they may be able to tolerate this level of stimuli, whether it's verbal or the environment and otherwise. We want to be able to tailor that, give them the proper level of support that's appropriate for them. And as we make an individualized plan, they're much more likely to thrive that way.
Well, with such a prevalence now, and it seems to be increasing of this particular condition, it's really important to come in and spread awareness about this, especially for Autism Acceptance Month. Thank you so much for coming in, Dr. Mina Merhome. Always great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And that wraps up our first hour of coverage, but stay with us because we have more news coming up for you in the next hour.
Divinely inspired traditional oil painting inspires compassion. Artwork created in truth and beauty illuminates a path to goodness. Rediscover traditional art, revive classical culture. We warmly invite oil painters from around the world to participate in the 7th NTD International Figure Painting Competition, a celebration of classical realism. Please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. In his first 100 days, has President Trump delivered on his promises? We examine the border, the economy, and the war in Ukraine to assess the progress the president has made in key areas.
A look into President Trump's sweeping border and immigration policies and the changes that have occurred since he took office.
The American public weighs in on Trump's presidency. We hear what they think of his policies and the changes he's made so far.
A big picture of the second Trump administration thus far. How does it compare to other U.S. presidents? And what about public approval? Two politics academics join us to break it down.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Hi, I'm Kevin Hogan in for Carrie. Welcome to NTD.
Today's Tuesday, April 29th. We'll be starting off this morning with a special coverage of Trump's first 100 days in office.
And it has been very eventful. President Trump signing many executive orders.
Yes, quite a few, but not too many of them have actually been signed into law.
Well, actually, he hasn't passed many laws. That's the lowest in any new president in this time in their presidency in the last 70 years, according to government records.
Just 5, I think.
Yeah, that's right. The Laken-Riley Act, you got a couple resolutions, and then the stopgap funding bill. It's probably because there are slim majorities in Congress, though. Could be why. But what about President Trump's campaign promises? Earlier, I joined NTD's Fiona G for a look back to see how he's done.
We're recapping President Donald Trump's second term back in office. He's made a lot of promises for the second presidency, but we've narrowed it down to the 5 key promises.
That's right, Fiona. President Trump is very ambitious with his goals on the economy and on immigration. Where to start?
Well, Kevin, let's start with securing the border, because that was a huge topic of conversation and a promise that President Trump made during his campaign trail.
Okay, in assessing this, let's look at the facts. President Trump was able to achieve record low border crossings in the months of February and March, and this is down significantly from what we saw under the Biden administration. At the same time, he has sent more military, those striker units, to detect illegal activity along the border, as well as shutting down the CBP-1 app. This was used by migrants to virtually schedule their asylum appointments, but President Trump said that it was being abused in that there were people that it was basically just paroling and admitting people that were not allowed to be in this country.
And so based on that, Kevin, I think we're going to give this promise, securing the border, a check. And we're going to move on to looking at improving the economy, another big one, Kevin, because President Donald Trump said he wants to bring investment back to the U.S. and make Americans' lives better. Okay,
right. So let's look at investments that President Trump says are a direct result of the tariffs that he puts. That's $500 billion from Apple. You got $100 billion from TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, building those AI chips and also AI supercomputers out there. You know, you talk about automotive, Hyundai, $23 billion, Novartis, Swiss pharma company, Roche, $50 billion. So again, these are massive investments that Trump takes credit for because he says these companies, they just don't want to pay tariffs. So they're coming and investing in the United States. But at the same time, the CNBC All-American Economic Survey shows that 55% of Americans disapprove of the job that Trump is doing on the economy. That's the lowest it's been in his entire presidential career, first and second term thus far. But there's a caveat to that because Republicans remain largely in support of what President Trump is doing on the economy. However, Democrats have a very, very negative view of the economy, and that's primarily what's driving these numbers down.
Well, still a lot of fluctuation, a lot of uncertainty here. I think we're going to have to give the president some more time to figure that one out. But let's look at combating DEI, combating diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is something we've seen the president take action on, both in the government and in these higher education institutes.
Yeah, so Trump took aim at Harvard University in that he was withholding billions, $2 billion of federal monies going to the school because he wants them to end their DEI practices. No more DEI hires based on ethnicity or so forth. He wants them to hire and admit people based on their merit. And furthermore, the Trump administration has required the Attorney General to urge private sector completely to get rid of all the DEI programs. And he's also signed a memo that ends the DEI programs in the Foreign Service.
So I think we're going to give this one a check, Kevin. Now, let's talk about ending the war in Ukraine on day one. We heard the president say that. He said he was going to end the war within 24 hours of coming back into office.
Right, so it's very clear the war is still going on. They're still fighting and carnage happening in Europe and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, President Trump did say that the day one comment was an exaggeration. He said he was being sarcastic, and people know that. And he also pointed out that the war's been going on for over 3 years and that he just got in and people are asking him, hey, what's taking you so long? But that said, said, President Trump is working very hard at securing a peace deal between these two countries. Keep in mind, he did say they would take a pass if either party, Russia or Ukraine, makes it too hard. But meeting with Zelensky at the White House, the Vatican, working with Saudi Arabia to broker a peace deal with the Russians, as well as just working towards a minerals deal with Ukraine. So working very hard, but the war is still ongoing.
That's right. As you said, he's still putting a lot of work into this, but specifically on this promise of ending the war on day one, we're going to have to give him a promise not kept on that one. All right, final promise here, Kevin. Unleashing energy, U.S. energy dominance. How is the president doing?
Well, Fiona, you've heard it, we've heard it, the moniker drill, baby, drill. Trump has definitely signed the Unleash American Energy Executive Order for this exact purpose, deregulating more access to oil, natural gas, nuclear energy, greenlighting coal, nixing these climate initiatives, doing what he can to bolster the American energy infrastructure.
All right, so I think it's fair to give this one a check as well. And there we have it, 5 of President Donald Trump's key promises for this second term. We've got securing the border, improving economy, combating DEI, ending the Ukraine war on day one, and of course, unleashing energy. Of course, we're only 100 days into this second presidency, Kevin. There's still a lot of time for things to be done, so we're going to have to keep an eye on what the president does next.
Yes, and while President Trump did not end the Ukraine war on day one, there is still plans, there's still peace agreements that are being worked out as we speak, so we have to take more time and see, and we're going to have more 100 days coverage for you, and so stay tuned with us.
Securing the southern border and tackling illegal immigration has been a main focus of the Trump administration. It's long been one of the key issues for voters across the country, too.
NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley takes us through President Trump's first 100 days on immigration.
From this moment on, America's decline is over.
Closing the southern border and deporting those who are in the country unlawfully, a top campaign promise that helped President Trump win a second term. Roughly 11 million immigrants crossed the border illegally under the Biden administration. On day one in office, Trump declared a national emergency, directing troops to the southern border, and signed 10 executive orders to combat illegal immigration.
I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks, bringing devastating crime to U.S. soil, including our cities and inner cities.
The administration ended the CBP One app, which allowed up to 1 million would-be illegal immigrants to make appointments to enter the country. Instead, Trump's team rebranded it as the CBP Home app, allowing illegal immigrants to self-deport. In February, Trump announced tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China for their roles in fentanyl flowing into the U.S. This prompted Mexico and Canada to bolster their efforts at their borders to stop fentanyl trafficking. China has yet to act.
10,000 soldiers at their side of the border and stop fentanyl and illegal aliens from coming into our country.
Trump also signed orders to end birthright citizenship and designate foreign gangs as terrorist organizations. But several of these initiatives have been challenged in court. In particular is Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which allows the government to detain and expel foreign nationals without a hearing during an invasion. Trump says Tren de Aragua has been directed by Maduro's regime in Venezuela to invade the U.S.
Well, they have an obligation. If you are a country and someone is illegally in another country, you have an obligation to take those people back, whether they're criminals or not. Venezuela said they wouldn't take them back. So we had to find a place to send them, especially the ones that had records.
The administration also partnered with El Salvador, which is housing a couple hundred illegal immigrant gang members from Venezuela.
Do not come to our country illegally. You will be removed and you will be prosecuted. But know that this facility is one of the tools in our toolkit that we will use if you commit crimes against the American people.
The administration on Monday celebrated Trump's first 100 days, displaying photos on the White House lawn of illegal immigrants convicted of crimes. These photos feature people charged or convicted of murder, rape, fentanyl distribution, and other crimes.
We are in the beginning stages of carrying out the largest deportation campaign in American history.
Under the first 100 days, what was actually January 20th to April 1st, last year, 184,000 illegal aliens were released into the United States. Under this administration, 9. This is unprecedented success. The border secure. President Trump saving lives.
And officials say this week they've deported nearly 140,000 illegal immigrants since Trump took office. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
As President Trump hits the 100th day of his second term, what do everyday Americans think about his performance so far?
NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from the people.
Looking back at everything that took place in the last couple of months, did everything meet your expectation?
Did everything meet my expectations? Yes, but that's because my expectations were tempered. You're not going to turn an aircraft carrier on a dime. It takes time to pivot and turn. So when it comes to those expectations, yeah, I would say they were met.
For how bad it's been, I'd say it's exceeded my expectations. It's a lot worse than I would have thought.
I think we're moving in the right direction. I think we've got a control on the border, which was a concern. Love immigration, but want it to happen in a orderly fashion.
Does President Trump have your approval so far?
Well, I think, they're the administration that's in the office right now, and we have to let them give a chance of what their vision for their administration will be.
I think he's only governing for himself and for people who have supported him instead of the whole country.
I disapprove. Well, first of all, you put somebody in charge who just came in to cut all kinds of funding for programs that were greatly needed for a lot of people.
But I owned my own business. I sold it, and I'm not a billionaire, but I worked hard for 40 years to get something. Being in retirement state that I'm in, it's very important to me to see him succeed, and hopefully I get a phone call from him soon.
One thing that I don't think anybody can disagree with is the man puts America ahead of everything. At the end of the day, his agenda, I think, is the right one, by and large.
What, in your mind, are some of his most significant achievements so far?
So far, I think, is definitely the border. Definitely the focus on crime. I think the cabinet that he's put in place is really focused on a safer America. I also think it's more focused on a healthier America, which I think is great.
I think one of the things that he has put to the forefront is the awareness that we have $1 trillion debt. The last administration to balance the budget was the Clinton-Gore.
It's not an accomplishment, it's the exact opposite of it, but I think he is, basically dismantling the United States' stature in the world.
In my opinion, his most significant achievement is ratcheting down the border. They're just shipping them back, saying go back and come back and do it the right way. We're not closing our doors. We're just saying we have a process. We expect you to follow it. I think that's reasonable.
Trump has done a lot of wonderful things, and he doesn't braggadociously. I know it sounds like he's braggadociously. He's very private when it comes to giving. He's helped a lot of people in this world without bragging about that prior to the election. And he's still very, very much a man in my eyes. I think he's going to do well for the next 4 years.
What should be President Trump's next priority going forward?
I think he's got to ease the concerns and the tensions of the people when it comes to the economy.
I would think that his first priority should be to listen more to people that he doesn't agree with, instead of only listening to people who tell him what he wants to hear.
I have 3 kids, so I would say that his next priority really has to be securing our financial future.
He needs to focus on that inflation. That is what is impacting most of Americans.
As it is right now, things are pretty expensive for most people. I live on a pretty low Social Security, and if that goes, I'm not sure what I'll do.
Keeping the motivation with people and believing that we all can work together. He's not the billionaire club. He's a good guy. And I'm waiting for a phone call. I want to go golf with the guy.
Up next, a deep dive into President Trump's first 100 days. Has he lived up to expectations as he attempts to make his vision for America a reality? Join our panel discussion for analysis after the break.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now. With your gift of $19 a month, we'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
It's good to have you back with us. We're continuing our coverage with a broad overview of the start of President Trump's second term. Please welcome our panelists. Joining us live are Jeff Bloodworth and Aaron Dusso. Jeff is a professor of modern American political history at Gannon University, and Aaron is an associate professor of political science at Indiana University, Indianapolis. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Professor Bloodworth, let's start with you. How have Trump's first 100 days of his second term compared with other presidents in recent history, including that of his first term?
This has been an enormous flurry of activity. Legislatively, I think it has lagged behind, let's say, Joe Biden, who I think had more legislative accomplishments in the first 100 days. But the enormous flurry of just vigor and exuding energy and tackling the campaign promises, I think have surely made his supporters happy. So, you know, the first 100 days politically for Donald Trump, especially with his base, have been successful.
Understood. And what are some of those key areas that you'd like to elaborate on?
Look, just with immigration, I mean, this is the one issue that Joe Biden really struggled with. And Trump has won that political contest as far as clamping down on the border. Now, politically, Donald Trump has, exuded an enormous amount of energy, sending people down to the border. And so people have a sense that the border is under control, and the numbers bear that out. I think in the long term, I would look for legislation. Donald Trump won the political argument versus the Democrats on immigration. But if Trump and Trumpism want to have a long-term success, I would look for legislation, and he needs to do more than just executive orders.
Professor Bloodworth, we know that executive orders are more susceptible to reversal, whereas Congress codifying that would be long-term, like you're saying. Professor Dusso, would you like to respond to what your co-panelist is saying?
No, I would build on what Professor Bloodworth says, is that this is certainly, I think, one of the most consequential 100 days, certainly of our lifetimes. But it's been done through this executive orders, which are, historically, we would analyze executive orders as being weak for the president. The president's strength comes in his ability to bargain with Congress and pass legislation that isn't so easily overturned by whoever happens to be elected next. So the challenge for the president right now is in negotiating with Congress in order to pass actual legislation that has durability, because executive orders are very ephemeral.
Understood. And Professor Dussault, how is President Trump faring in the public opinion polls in various areas? Could be overall or economy, others?
Well, overall, he's not doing that great. He came in probably at the high point of his entire political career. He was sitting at just maybe about 50% approval rating, just under 50% approval rating come January. But now, if you look at polling averages, he's at about 44 or 45, depending on where you look. And so this is a significant drop. And the only corollary really is his first term, where he was at about 45% after 100 days. Otherwise, every other president in modern history, going all the way back to Eisenhower, has had significantly higher approval ratings at this point in time in their administration.
And Professor Bloodworth, would you like to expand on that, what he's saying?
Yeah, this is what is a little bit confounding, is that, as the co-panelist says, Donald Trump started when he was inaugurated at his political high point throughout his really 12 years of being in the public limelight as a politician. And the executive orders are going to, make his base very happy. But we think about free trade or immigration, it's depressed his poll numbers. And for the long term, if Trumpism is going to be something beyond Donald Trump, the political capital should be spent in passing legislation that is going to endure after his presidency. He's about at 45% is what I've seen in terms of public approval rating. And we're going to see if the free trade, negotiations are going to lead to an economic downturn, which, if it does, that's going to make his poll ratings even less. He's been enormously active, and that has made his base very happy. But it's interesting to see the political capital not being spent on legislation that is going to endure. And so, the first 100 days, if you're a supporter of the president, you are surely pleased. But I'm wondering about the second act.
Understood, Professor Bloodworth. And to add to this point, the CNBC poll shows that 55% of Americans do not agree with the way that President Trump is handling the economy, but there's a big partisan divide with Democrats, a net 90 points that they do not agree with him. That's primarily dragging those numbers down. Back to you, Professor Dussault. What roadblocks has the administration run into in Trump's bringing his vision for America?
Well, since most of his vision has been trying to implement it through executive orders, his real challenge has been in the courts, because executive orders are not meant for legislation. The president has no power to actually act as a legislator and create laws. The only ability that executive orders have is to direct the executive branch to implement policy that has been passed by Congress. The president's his responsibility is to implement Congress's vision, not his own. And so what happens here is his executive orders have moved well beyond and perhaps into the legislative branch's domain, and therefore he's facing a lot of court challenges in whether or not he actually has the ability to do that. The best example is probably when it comes to his executive order regarding voting in federal elections. That is something that the Constitution explicitly gives to Congress. Congress and the states have the ability to make laws regarding the federal elections. The president plays no role in it at all, and yet he's making a law that is clearly legislating, how these how these elections are supposed to be implemented, and that is being challenged in courts. And so right now he's facing a lot of challenges in courts, and courts are siding, against him in a lot of cases, and he's challenging them both in public opinion and, in presumably up to the Supreme Court.
Thank you for that insight, Professor Dussault. And I will add that the president is the executive charged with enforcing the laws of the country, whereas Congress passes the laws. Professor Bloodworth, has Trump lived up to his expectations that were set during his campaign?
Yeah, look, yes. What the president is doing is what he promised during the campaign. Look, Donald Trump never campaigns in exact details, But he promised to clamp down on free trade. He promised to clamp down on immigration. He has promised to make America less interventionist in foreign affairs. And, you know, if that is the program that you voted for, that is what he is delivering. I think it is, for some voters who cast a ballot for him, it might be more chaotic than they expected. And I think that's what you're seeing in the polls, is that, you know, a majority of Americans agreed with Donald Trump on a majority of the issues. And the sagging poll numbers are a reflection of the manner in which he is pursuing these policies. But, you know, look, the first 100 days, if you are a Donald Trump supporter, it's promises made, and if not delivered, they're on their way. At least that's what you're seeing.
I understand what you're saying, Jeff, and as a technicality, President Trump did not end the Ukraine war on day one, which is something he sought to do. However, he said he was exaggerating and that maybe he needs more time to achieve that goal. Professor Dussault, there have been a few hiccups during the first 100 days, and some of them can be very serious, such as the signal leak. Did Trump respond to them in the appropriate manner?
I'm not sure that Trump responded to the signal leak in any real significant way. I think that the thought of the administration is that as time goes by, the media will move on to something else, and then it'll just disappear. And I think that that's actually been borne out over the last number of weeks. We don't talk about Signalgate very much at all. So he's been successful in that way. I think, you know, the big challenge for President Trump is really on two issues, and that's immigration and the economy. The economy has eaten presidents alive for, you know, anytime it goes sour. It doesn't matter who you are. This isn't going to be about Trump if the economy goes south. He has to be concerned that there are signs that this is not going to go well, and he has to change course. Otherwise, because we already have approval ratings on the economy, which should be his strongest issue, that are down about 40% approval rating on that. And that is a very big danger sign for him and his ability to be able to pass anything else if he's seen as a failure on the economy.
Thank you for that, Aaron. And Professor Bloodworth, back to you. Paint us a broad picture of how President Trump has responded to world events. We've been talking about foreign policy.
Look, Donald Trump, I mean, just take the war in Ukraine. He has pledged to make the U.S. less intricately involved in the internal affairs of Europe in particular. And he's trying to extricate the U.S. from, you know, what really was 75 years of America's post-war foreign policy. And look, this is not an easy thing to do, to turn an aircraft carrier around. So Donald Trump, we will see what's going to happen with the war in Ukraine, because America can't control what Russia's policy is going to be. But I think it's quite clear that Donald Trump, as opposed to the first term, is moving more aggressively to be more America first, in his words, when it comes to America's role in the world, and being less engaged multilaterally, especially with European allies. I mean, I think he had a more difficult time doing that in the first term because his foreign policy team wasn't on the same page with him. And I think he has a foreign policy team that is more aligned with America first. And we're seeing those moves towards that. That is a longer term, more difficult pivot to make than, say, free trade and immigration, where the president can act, you know, through executive orders more quickly and have a more, you know, the optics of action.
I hear what you're saying, Jeff. And Aaron, we just have a minute left, so I'll give you the last word here. Any final thoughts on the first 100 days of Trump's administration?
Well, I mean, when it comes to foreign affairs, the change here is monumental. The world as it was built after World War II was built in the United States' image, with us at the center. We were the leaders. Everyone looked to us and followed us. Our word meant something. We had the ability to move nations simply by saying that we needed them. And so moving away from that, pulling back into and closing up our borders, turning our backs on our NATO allies has been a huge mistake, because we're taking away our own leadership, our ability to move people without military might. It's not because we threaten them. It's because they like us. They think that we're beneficial to them and the world. And we're throwing that all away. The entire history and entire post-World War II history are throwing that all away right now with Donald Trump's turn his back on the world. And this is a very big danger for us. It doesn't make us safer.
A fascinating discussion this morning. Professors Jeff Bloodworth and Aaron Dussault, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And stay with us. We hope to bring you a look back on the president's China policy when we come back.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com. Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. Fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes, Days Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Days Enzyme Fermented Coffee.
Focus on beauty, showcase nature, share kindness, feel brightness. 2025, the 5th NTD International Photography Competition. Capture the beautiful moments in your eyes. Your works will be showcased in galleries and on multiple online platforms, appreciated and collected. Please visit photo.ntdtv.com.
My name's Stacy, I'm 57, and I was adopted in 2020.
We were adopted in 2019.
And we were adopted in 2021.
We had a house, and it sounds crazy, but it wasn't a home. The one thing that Jake and Emma brought is it became a home.
When I met Dakota, he had just turned 14.
You weren't there for the first this and the first that. I missed the first words, but we got a lot of other firsts.
Watching her say, oh my God, I cannot believe I got my license. And she's like, I passed. And I'm like, girl.
See them grow. It is.
They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
You and you.
Kids in the middle.
What I thought was a complete life was nowhere near complete, but it is now.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
Life's daily battles are not meant to be fought alone.
Cloud, you okay?
Because checking in on a friend can create a safe space. Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Seize the awkward. It's totally worth it.
Welcome back. The military is another area where the Trump administration is confronting China head on. Here's more on that.
Peace through strength is the Trump administration's slogan for its defense strategy.
The U.S. is prioritizing deterring war with China in the Pacific, recognizing the reality of scarcity and making the resourcing trade-offs to ensure deterrence does not fail. Deterrence cannot fail for all of our sakes.
What's more, the Trump administration is also determined to make the U.S. military a more lethal, stronger force.
Today, there are more executive orders coming that we fully support on removing DEI inside the Pentagon, reinstating troops who were pushed out because of COVID mandates, Iron Dome for America. This is happening quickly. America is back. We are laser focused on our mission of warfighting.
As for how the administration stands on relationships with allies,
we will work with our allies and our partners to deter the communist Chinese and their aggression in the Indo-Pacific. Full stop. By standing shoulder to shoulder with you, our allies and partners, we will put our enemies, our adversaries, our those who stand against us on notice.
What's interesting to note is this administration's foreign policy on Taiwan. The island is a key U.S. ally in the Indo-Pacific. Its semiconductor manufacturing and its strategic location make it a significant player for both the U.S. economy and national security. President Trump also said this.
Is it also your policy that as long as you're president, China will never take Taiwan by force?
I never comment on that. I don't comment on anything because I don't want to ever put myself in that position.
Speaking of strategic locations, 2 other choke points have occupied headlines during the first 100 days of President Trump's second term: the Panama Canal and Greenland.
The American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. Greenland is necessary, not for us, it's necessary for international security. You have Russian boats all over the place, you have China boats all over the place, warships, and they can't maintain it.
Trump is also seeking to divest supply chains of rare earth minerals to cut reliance on China. The critical minerals are used to make weapons.
And we're going live now to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
She's holding a press briefing at the White House with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
It was the largest ever recorded. And after Joe Biden botched the response to the bird flu, President Trump and Secretary Rollins' aggressive plan have brought down wholesale egg prices more than 50% from Inauguration Day. President Trump ended Joe Biden's reckless war on American energy and fossil fuels and has restored American energy dominance. And Secretary Wright, Secretary Doug Burgum are working hard on that effort every single day. Oil and gas prices are now way down because of this bold approach. Gasoline prices down 7%. Energy prices are also down as well. The Department of Interior just announced a new offshore drilling policy that will boost oil production in the Gulf of America by 100,000 barrels per day. On the deregulation front, President Trump is committed to cutting senseless red tape, especially for America's small business owners who are the backbone of our economy. We know cutting regulation leads to lower costs and higher growth. The mass deregulation effort by this administration will help usher in the golden age of America, which is underway. Immediately upon taking office, President Trump blocked all of the unfinalized Biden-era rules, saving Americans more than $100 billion, or $2,100 per family of 4 over the next decade. And the president also launched a bold multi-agency effort to roll back existing federal regulations that drive up the cost of living on hardworking families. This effort is projected to yield significant cost savings in the coming months, including the EPA's rollback of tailpipe emission rules for light-duty and medium-duty vehicles and the Department of Transportation's latest corporate average fuel economy standards. These 2 efforts alone yield $755 billion in total savings, or more than $8,800 per family of 4 over the next decade. In total, the combined savings from all of these actions equal just over $935 billion, or nearly $11,000 in real savings per family of 4 per the coming decade. The press is not talking nearly enough about the positive impact of President Trump's deregulation campaign. And investments from the biggest companies and countries in the world are pouring in under this president. So far, total investment commitments under the Trump administration have reached more than $5 trillion, including $500 billion from Apple in U.S.-based manufacturing and training, $500 billion from NVIDIA in AI infrastructure, $100 billion from TSMC and U.S.-based chips manufacturing, and the $500 billion private investment by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank in AI infrastructure as well. All of these investment commitments are estimated to generate at least 451,000 new high-paying jobs for American workers and families. At this point, President Trump has secured more investments in the United States of America in 100 days than Joe Biden did in 4 years. President Trump is America's businessman in chief, and that's why these trillions of dollars in investments are flooding to our country. The business community is bullish on America because President Trump is back in charge. Tomorrow, the president will host CEOs and leaders from several companies that have made these investments to tout their historic commitments to our country and encourage others to follow suit. Under President Trump, there has never been a better time to invest in America. And the president finally said enough is enough and refused to allow America and our workers to be ripped off any longer on trade. President Trump implemented powerful tariffs to end the era of economic surrender and to rebalance America's trading agreements. More than 100 countries have already come to the table looking to offer more favorable terms for America and our people. There has never been a president who has created his own leverage like this president, and we are just getting started. Republicans in Congress are getting very close to passing President Trump's one big, beautiful bill, which will include the largest tax cuts in American history, strong border security measures, major military advancements, dramatic deregulation, and common sense spending reforms. As President Trump has said before, the best is yet to come. For more on President Trump's economic successes so far and the plans ahead, I want to pass it off to our incredible Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who is here today, and we will open it up to questions. In our new media seat, we have Brendan Peterson, the financial services reporter for Punchbowl News. Punchbowl News covers power, people, and politics based in Washington, D.C., laser focused on Capitol Hill, the politics of legislating, founded in 2021, and it is the first newsletter that Capitol Hill and the White House reads every morning in the middle of the day and throughout the evening. Thanks for being here with us, and we'll start with you today.
Thanks so much for being here. I have a question for Secretary Bessent. On tariffs, the president said over the weekend that we are hoping that maybe tariff revenues could replace income tax. But we also keep hearing about the deals that the administration is pursuing. So my question is, what is the White House's ultimate objective here? Do you want to have long-term tariff revenue or deals that might reduce those tariffs?
I think it's a combination of both. So we're going to take in long-term tariff revenue. We put a process in place. We have 18 important trading relationships. We will be speaking to all of those partners, or at least 17 of them, over the next few weeks. Many of them have already come to Washington. What President Trump is referring to is the ability for tariff revenue to give income tax relief. And I think there's a very good chance that we will see this in the upcoming tax bill. The president campaigned on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and the restoring interest deductibility for autos, for American-made autos. So tariff income could be used for tax relief on all of those immediately.
So you think that there is a role for significant tariff revenue in U.S. fiscal policy?
I think that it is something that got put away a long time ago, and I think that tariffs will bring back American manufacturing and generate substantial revenues.
On manufacturing, we've seen some pretty grisly surveys this month from the Philly Fed, which saw the biggest drop since May of 2020, and the Dallas Fed, similar plunging outlook, poor shipping orders. What are American manufacturers not understanding about your push for onshoring in the U.S.?
Well, I think I was in the investment business 35 years, and I learned to ignore the survey data and look at the actual data, and the actual data has been quite good. The job data is good. Americans keep spending, and as Caroline said, we have these incredible commitments to bring manufacturing back on shore with record investment by domestic corporations and foreigners who want to come into the U.S.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The Chinese continue to say that the U.S. and China are not engaged in any consultation or negotiation on tariffs. You recently said you've talked to your counterpart, but more about, quote, traditional things like financial stability. So can you clarify, is the administration talking to Beijing specifically about tariffs or not?
Well, we're not going to talk about who's talking to whom, but I think that, over time we will see that the Chinese tariffs are unsustainable for China. I've seen some very large numbers over the past few days to show if these numbers stay on, Chinese could lose 10 million jobs very quickly. And even if there is a drop in the tariffs, that they could lose 5 million jobs. So remember that we are the deficit country. They sell almost 5 times more goods to us than we sell to them. So the onus will be on them to take off these tariffs. They're unsustainable for them.
And they are saying you guys are not talking about it. So is that true?
Look, they have a different form of government. They're playing to a different audience. So I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, again, of who's talking to whom. But as I said, I believe for the Chinese, these tariffs are unsustainable.
And very quickly, 2 days ago, you said you didn't know if President Trump had spoken to Xi Jinping. Do you know now?
Again, I would say Caroline and I have a lot of jobs around the White House. Running the switchboard isn't one of them.
Bloomberg, go ahead. Secretary Bissett, thank you so much for being here this morning. You've talked about the importance of giving investors certainty when it comes to the market, yet the Trump administration is continuing to negotiate several complex trade deals in a very sort of compressed time frame. When do you expect you'll be able to give the market some certainty around those deals? Do you have a deadline? Is it the 90-day pause? What are we looking at here?
Good question. And I think one thing that has been a little disconcerting for the markets is, President Trump creates what I would call strategic uncertainty in the negotiations. So he is more concerned about getting the best possible trade deals for the American people. We had 4 years of bad deals for decades of unfair trading, and we are going to unwind those and make them fair. What we are doing is we've created a process. I think the aperture of uncertainty will be narrowing, and as we start moving forward announcing deals, then there will be certainty. But certainty is not necessarily a good thing in negotiating.
Mr. Secretary, last night there were reports on the administration sort of walking back a little bit on the auto tariffs. Can you sort of just elaborate on that decision there and what we can expect going forward, and why sort of the shift in those auto tariffs?
Well, President Trump has had meetings with both domestic and foreign auto producers, and he's committed to bringing back auto production to the U.S. So we want to give the automakers a path to do that quickly, efficiently, and create as many jobs as possible.
Jasmine. Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Secretary. Back on China, does the administration anticipate supply chain shocks or supply shocks coming now that cargo shipments from China are significantly down? And if so, are there plans in the process of how to address that?
I wouldn't think that we would have supply chain shocks, and I think retailers have managed their inventory in front of this. I speak to dozens of companies, sometimes daily, but definitely weekly, and they know that President Trump is committed to fair trade and have planned accordingly.
And then second question, can you outline the timeline for when you think some of these deals, particularly with your Asian countries like India, Japan, South Korea, you may have an announcement?
I'm glad you brought up our Asian trading partners and allies. They have been the most forthcoming in terms of doing the deals. As I mentioned, Vice President Vance was in India last week. I think that he and Modi made some very good progress, so I could see some announcements on India. I could see the contours of a deal with the Republic of Korea coming together, and then we've had substantial talks with the Japanese.
Andrea.
Secretary Besson, just continuing on the path of the sort of progress. You said yesterday, I think, that it was could happen as early as this week or possibly next week. Can you give us a bit of a timetable? And then I wanted to ask about South Korea specifically. They've said that they probably won't be able to make a comprehensive deal until early July because of their elections. Japan also has elections. And to what extent are domestic factors complicating your efforts? Canada just had an election. Are you seeing that you might have to think about delaying the 90 days?
Well, I would actually take the opposite tack, that I think from our talks that these governments actually want to have the framework of a trade deal done before they go into elections to show that they have successfully negotiated with the United States. So we are finding that they are actually much more keen to come to the table, get this done, and then go home and campaign on it.
Sean?
I'm sorry, did you have a comment on whether something could happen this week or next week? For a deal. So, you said yesterday.
Again, I think that we are very close on India. And in India, just a little inside baseball, India, in a funny way, is easier to negotiate with than many other countries because they have very high tariffs and lots of tariffs. So it's much easier to confront the direct tariffs when as we go through these unfair trade deals that have been put in over decades, that the non-tariff trade barriers can be much more insidious and also harder to detect. So a country like India, which has the posted and ready tariffs, it's much easier to negotiate with them. So I think the India negotiations are moving well.
Sean, go
Hi,
ahead.
Mr. Secretary. So it was reported this morning that Amazon will soon display a little number next to the price of each product that shows how much the Trump tariffs are adding to the cost of each product. So isn't that a perfect crystal clear demonstration that it's the American consumer and not China who is going to have to pay for these policies?
I will take this since I just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise because, as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
Is Jeff Bezos still a Trump supporter?
Look, I will not speak to the president's relationships with Jeff Bezos, but I will tell you that this is certainly a hostile and political action by Amazon. And Secretary, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I would also add that the bringing down the terrible Biden inflation has been a priority for the first 100 days of the Trump administration, and President Trump has done a great job of leading that since January 20th. Interest rates, mortgage rates are down, gasoline and energy prices are down. We're expecting the further decreases. And as Caroline said, the big tax on consumers that goes unnoticed is deregulation or regulation, and we are deregulating and bringing that down. So, from a household income point of view, we would expect real purchasing increases. We've seen them over the first 100 days, and we would expect that to accelerate. We are doing peace deals, trade deals, tax deals, and deregulating. And the deregulation is a longer lead time, but I think by the third and fourth quarters, that's really going to kick in.
Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. A question for you and Secretary Bessent. We talk a lot about volatility and uncertainty in the marketplace, and the president has stated all along that he's more concerned about mainstream America, the American worker. You just talked about deregulation and this entire fair trade and reciprocals. What is your message to the American people in terms of letting them get through this disturbance and the outcome being greater and a greater good for the American worker, the American people, the American families?
I would say trust in President Trump. There's a reason he was reelected to this office. It's because of the historic success of his economic formula in the first term. And as I laid out at the beginning of the briefing and the Secretary has talked about and the President talks about every day, there's a proven formula that works. Massive deregulation, energy independence, and tax cuts, which are coming. And the Secretary is working very hard on that with our counterparts on Capitol Hill. If you want to talk about that, that's a huge deal to put more money back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. As for the fair trade deals the president is trying to negotiate, he's not just righting the wrong of the mess that he inherited from the past 4 years of the Biden administration. This is a mess that has been created for the past 4 decades that has sold out the middle class, that has moved jobs overseas. You think about our heartland, middle America, what towns used to look like, what they look like today. President Trump wants to restore the golden age, and it's a process to do that. And that process is underway, but he's put together a fantastic trade team. Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick, Jamieson Greer, all working incredibly hard on this effort 24/7. But tax cuts are coming, and that's key. And Mr. Secretary, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yep. So it's really a three-legged stool in the economic policy. It's trade, it's tax, and it's deregulation. So we are in the midst of addressing, as Caroline said, these long-term trade imbalances. The tax bill is going much better than I would have thought when I took office on January 28th, and that's through President Trump's leadership. That Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune are united. Speaker Johnson, we had a very good meeting yesterday with somebody called the Big Six, NEC Director Kevin Hassett, myself, Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, Committee Chairman Jason Smith, and Senator Crapo. And the tax bill is moving forward. It is going to give permanence to the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act, which will, back to the question on certainty, it will give American business certainty, it will give American people certainty, and then President Trump is also adding the things for working Americans that is talked about earlier: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, making auto payments deductible. So that will substantially address the affordability crisis. And the other thing that I would note, and back to data, is that the Vanguard, one of the largest money management firms in America, said that over the past 100 days, 97% of Americans haven't done a trade. And in fact, individual investors have held tight while institutional investors have panicked. So individual investors trust, investors trust President Trump.
Megan, in the back.
Can you detail for us exactly what we should expect as far as relief on the auto tariffs front? And then further, Mr. Secretary, should we expect other industries to also get relief the way we've now seen for auto and tech as well?
I'm not going to go into the details of the auto tariff relief, but I can tell you that it will go substantially toward reshoring American auto manufacturing. And again, the goal here is to bring back the high quality industrial jobs to the U.S. President Trump is interested in the jobs of the future, not the jobs of the past. We don't need to necessarily have a booming textile industry like where I grew up again, but we do want to have precision manufacturing and bring that back. And another important, very important function of this that does not get talked about enough is national security. President Trump, his overriding concern and belief is that economic security is national security is economic security. And we saw during COVID that our supply chains got cut off. And we need to bring back a lot of those supply chains, whether it's in semiconductors, medicines, the steel, and we have to onshore those. So it's a combination of making trade free and fair and remedying this gaping national security hole that he was left with.
I would just add, Megan, the president will sign the executive order on auto tariffs later today, and we will release it as we always do. Go ahead.
Secretary, any updates on the negotiation with the European Union, and is it hard to negotiate with the European Union?
Pardon?
Do you have any updates on the negotiation with the European Union?
I'm more involved in the Asian negotiations. My observation would be, goes all the way back to Henry Kissinger's statement, when I call Europe, who do I call? So we're negotiating with a lot of different interests. Some of the European countries have put on an unfair digital service tax on our big internet provider. France and Italy, other countries, Germany and Poland, don't have that. So we want to see that unfair tax of one of America's great industries removed. So it's going to be a give and take. So they have some internal matters to decide before they can engage in an external negotiation.
Edward.
Thanks, Caroline. Mr. Secretary, so contacts I have in the business community say that they're basically frozen for long-term investment because of the uncertainty around tariffs. How long do you think President Trump has to make a deal before there's damage to the economy?
Look, I think that what we're seeing is that business leaders, they've gone into a pause, and I think we're going to give them great certainty on this tax bill. And I think over the next couple of weeks, as I said, we have 18 important trading relationships. We'll put China to the side. 17 they are in motion. And then, as I said yesterday, I think there's a very good chance we're going to get this tax bill done. And the tax bill is going to be very powerful for domestic U.S. investment. So what we are going to do, one of the most powerful parts of President Trump's 2017 tax bill was full expensing of equipment. We are going to make that, as President Trump said in his speech to Congress, that will be retroactive to January 20th. The other thing that we are looking to add is full expensing for factories. So bring your factory back. You can fully expense the equipment and the building. We will couple that with deregulation, cheap energy, and regulatory certainty, and that will continue to make the U.S. the greatest destination for domestic and foreign investment.
And the president, well, if I could follow, just the president said that world leaders would like to meet with him in Rome, in Vatican City, about trade. Other than President Zelensky, who did the president meet with, and about trade, and when could we get some of those deals?
The president met with President Zelensky, as you know, which we talked about, and the president continues to be engaged with his fellow leaders around the world in the European Union. You've seen many of them visit the White House. I want to harp on, in closing, the point the Secretary just made. On the campaign trail, the president promised the American public that he was going to make America the best country in the world to do business again. The lowest taxes, lowest regulation, lowest energy costs of anywhere in the world. And if you do business in the United States, you won't pay a tariff, you won't pay a price. That's not just good for companies around the world, but it's good for the American worker. That's what this team is focused so hard on every day. We have work to do. The golden age of America is underway. But as I pointed out in the beginning, there's a lot of reason for the American consumer, the American CEO, the American small business owner to be confident and optimistic about this president and where we're headed. So you will hear more from the president himself later this evening. He is traveling to Michigan, as you all know. He'll make a stop at the Air Force Base with Governor Whitmer, and then we will head to a rally tonight where you'll hear more from him directly. So we'll see you in Michigan. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Caroline.
And you just saw White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. An interesting comment that Bessent made was that there is strategic uncertainty surrounding Trump's trade deals. He says that that uncertainty is what allows good deals to be made.
Right, and Caroline Leavitt there calling Trump the businessman in chief, and Scott Bessent saying that he expects no supply chain shocks amid all of these tariffs. So the uncertainty matched with potentially no supply chain shocks. We'll have to see how it pans out. But
interesting, as well as the stock market, of course, because investors want certainty. We've seen a roller coaster stock market, whereas Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is saying that the individual investors, when you look at Vanguard data, they haven't made trades mostly in the last 100 days, showing that they trust Trump, whereas the institutional investors, they've panicked, he says.
Yeah, very interesting. And next up, a major business summit takes place at the White House tomorrow.
CEOs and senior executives from NVIDIA, Johnson & Johnson, Hyundai, Toyota, and SoftBank are among the over 20 business leaders scheduled to attend an event highlighting U.S. investments.
Does it affect you?
President Trump will host the Investing in America event, promoting a wide range of investments in sectors such as defense, technology, and healthcare. The goal is to encourage companies to expand their manufacturing footprint in the United States.
And the White House says recent investment pledges from major firms like Taiwan's TSMC and Apple show resounding confidence in the U.S. economy. Last month, South Korea's Hyundai announced a more than $20 billion investment in the U.S., including a nearly $6 billion Hyundai steel plant in Louisiana.
It appears a deal has been reached with automakers to ease tariffs.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says the agreement will help manufacturers who are committed to investing in America.
His statement did not provide any details on the agreement. The Wall Street Journal reported that President Trump is set to announce a new tariff structure for cars. The newspaper said it would avoid stacking tariffs on top of the other tariffs already in place.
Currently, there's a 25% tariff on almost all imported cars. There's also 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum, two metals heavily used in auto production.
Up ahead, what will the GOP's new budget look like and what federal spending is on the chopping block? More details will come out over the next week as lawmakers start marking up the budget changes. All that after the break.
I can't get a hold of my mom.
I'm sure it's nothing.
I've called her 5 times.
I'm sure she's fine.
Is Grandma okay? Help! I've fallen and I can't get up.
Don't worry, ma'am. We're sending help right now.
Hello?
Hello, this is Life Alert. Your mother had an emergency, and we dispatched paramedics to her home.
Oh my gosh, what happened?
She had a fall, but don't worry. She is safe, and the paramedics are helping her right now.
Thank you.
Life Alert saves a life every 11 minutes. With one simple touch of a button, Life Alert sends help immediately. Whether it's to report a fall, a medical emergency, or an intruder, Life Alert sends first responders fast.
For a free brochure, call 800-382-9846. 800-382-9846. That's 800-382-9846.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.
Welcome back. Lawmakers are back in Washington and Republicans are hitting the ground running on big budget changes.
What will the new budget look like and what federal spending is on the chopping block? NTD's Melina Wisecup reports.
Today, lawmakers are getting down into the details on a new federal budget. House Speaker Mike Johnson met with President Trump and 5 other budget leaders in Congress on Monday to talk strategy.
We're still on our schedule. I think we can meet it. As you know, we have 7 committees marking up this week, 4 the following week, and then that third week. I believe we can pass it by Memorial Day. I do. Yes.
Border security and immigration policy are the biggest focus. Lawmakers have approved $200 billion to increase spending in these areas. Defense spending will increase by around $100 billion, with a strong focus on the Navy and shipbuilding to deter China's aggression in the Pacific Ocean and the South China Sea. Meanwhile, Republicans aim to cut at least $2 trillion from federal spending over the next decade. Committee meetings start this week, first in the House Armed Services and Education Workforce committees.
In my particular budget area, Department of Education and Labor, those issues, we're looking at some significant cuts that will, in fact, I think help our educational policy moving forward.
Democrats protested the planned budget changes with a sit-in on the Capitol steps over the weekend. They've continued to warn against cuts to Medicaid.
They're going to hurt children, hurt families, hurt seniors, hurt people with disabilities, close hospitals, shut down nursing homes, and people will die. This is a matter of life and death.
Though Republicans have vowed not to kick off eligible Medicaid recipients and to only cut fraud and abuse from the program. Tax policy is up for change too. The GOP plans to extend Trump's 2017 tax cuts and make a new law to prevent tax collection on tips and Social Security. Once the budget markups are complete, lawmakers will vote on one final bill in both the House and the Senate. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Power is returning to Spain and Portugal after a huge blackout. It brought most of the Iberian Peninsula to a complete standstill yesterday. Here's what happened in Spain.
Cheers rang out across the Spanish capital Madrid Monday night as power began to return to the city. In an evening address, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said Spain's grid operator had restored electricity to about half of the country. Since around 12:30 Monday afternoon local time, almost the entire country was without power. Planes were grounded, public transport halted, and hospitals had to suspend routine operations. Eyewitness video showed people walking along railway lines after their train came to a halt. Ana Cordero, a tourist from Puerto Rico, was among them.
It was basically 5 minutes in, and they told us it was like a general apagón, which is like a general blackout, and they didn't know what was going on. I think within 3 hours, they decided to evacuate because there was nothing else to do. There's no news, there's no information about what's going on.
In the city of Valencia, stranded passengers were preparing to spend the night inside the train station. For Lola Diaz Fernandez, who uses a wheelchair, it could have been a nightmare.
I'm in a wheelchair, and for me to be seated for so many hours, it means problems like inflammation in my legs, among other things. And thankfully, I could stay here as there are adapted toilets. Imagine if they had kicked me out on the street. What would I have done for basic needs?
The Red Cross started installing camp beds for travelers who were stuck inside the Joaquin Sorolla station. According to the country's electrical grid operator, the outage was due to a sudden large drop in supply that caused the grid to trip. Spain's energy ministry said Monday evening the network lost 15 gigawatts of electricity in 5 seconds. What caused this drop is still unknown. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said Monday authorities were not ruling out any hypothesis.
What has caused this sudden disappearance of supply? This is something that specialists have not yet been able to determine, but they will. And the relevant state institutions and all private operators are working together to understand what has happened.
Spain's Interior Ministry declared a national emergency Monday. In neighboring Portugal, the government convened an emergency cabinet meeting to find out what caused the blackout. By evening, electricity was starting to be restored. For some, the blackout exposed how dependent countries are on the power grid.
As soon as the electricity goes down, we're locked here, locked in the city, in our houses. We can't do anything. We can't buy anything. The gas stations are closed. The shops are closed. We can't pay. We can't withdraw money from the ATMs. We're lost. It's like war.
Outages on this scale are very rare in Europe. In 2003, a problem with a hydroelectric power line caused a major outage on the Italian peninsula for 12 hours. In 2006, an overloaded network in Germany caused cuts across the continent and as far as Morocco in Africa.
Still to come, Amazon launched a batch of satellites into orbit, marking the biggest stride in the tech giant's efforts to compete with Starlink. More on that right after this break.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste, and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth, without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now, Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. On food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one get one free offer goes away.
Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. Fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes, Days Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Days Enzyme Fermented Coffee.
Got a new house.
I think I finally found a place that I call home.
Amazon yesterday launched a batch of satellites into orbit.
It marks the biggest stride yet in the tech giant's efforts to join a race to blanket the planet in internet connectivity beamed from space. Here are the details.
Ignition and full thrust.
After years of waiting, Amazon has finally launched its Kuiper internet satellites. The tech giant launched its first 27 satellites into low Earth orbit from Florida on Monday, kicking off deployment of a broadband from space network. It's a big bet that pits it against telecoms providers around the globe, as well as Elon Musk's Starlink. These are the first of over 3,200 satellites Amazon plans to launch for Project Kuiper, a $10 billion effort. Like Starlink, Amazon has positioned Kuiper as a boon to rural areas where connectivity is sparse or doesn't exist. The launch of its first satellites, originally planned for early 2024, was delayed by over a year. U.S. regulators want half the satellites launched by the middle of next year, but given delays so far, experts think Amazon might request an extension. Project Kuiper has had a late start in the market for space, which is dominated by Musk's SpaceX. Amazon believes its product and cloud experience will give it an edge over Starlink. Executive Chairman Jeff Bezos has voiced confidence that Kuiper can compete, telling Reuters in a January interview, quote, "There's insatiable demand for internet. There's room for lots of winners there. I predict Starlink will continue to be successful, and I predict Kuiper will be successful as well." Amazon is expected to confirm contact with all the satellites from its Redmond Control Center within days. The company said it expects to begin delivering service to customers later this year, if all goes as planned.
Italy and the Vatican are sharing a pavilion at Expo 2025 in Osaka for the first time.
A Baroque master is the focus of the collaboration. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
The Italian pavilion at Expo 2025 Osaka. Mario Vittani is the Commissioner General for Italy at this year's show. He explains how the event brings history, design, and innovation together in one place.
When people think of Italy, especially in Asia, especially in Japan, they immediately think of culture, art, history, music, which is fantastic. But at the same time, that is not just what we want to talk about.
Vittani describes how the space blends the ancient and modern. Art, science, and technology are intertwined. This year, the pavilion includes a special section, a first-time collaboration with the Vatican. At the heart of the Holy See Pavilion, the Entombment of Christ by Caravaggio. The painting is on loan from the Vatican Museum.
The impact you have, I think, when you enter, and that's what I hear from the people who visit, the impact you have is this kind of mix, which works very well because it's a Renaissance idea that puts engineering with art, like Leonardo da Vinci himself was both an artist and a scientist.
Visitor Gerald Williams described how moved he was by the works.
Caravaggio always does such masculine people in his paintings, and to see it up close was a real kind of treat, like how masculine the painting actually is, and the emotion of the woman in the background raising up to God. Like, that was quite something.
The pavilion was officially opened by Archbishop Rino Fisichella. The painting has already drawn crowds wanting to see a Caravaggio up close.
Digitalization is great, AI is great, but at the same time we don't want people to go away from society and to lose their, their exchanges and meet only online or something like that. So this really has a great influence on our values at the same time.
Expo 2025 Osaka runs for 6 months until October 13th. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Fascinating display. All right, we have to wrap up our show now, but be sure to stay tuned for more special coverage of Trump's first 100 days in office today at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's coming up.
And for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. I'm Stephanie Cox.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth. Without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now, Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. On food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one get one free offer goes away.
That first time seeing my son, I feel like my life did a 180. I was already trying to change my perspective of life and really just be a father figure that I never had. Being present is the most important part. I'm still growing every day. Becoming a better version of myself. To be the better mirror for my son. I mean, he's just grown. He's becoming his own person. Man, at first I saw him dance, bro, he brings the vibes, you know what I'm saying? He brings the party no matter what. He really a definition of like why he loves somebody. And I love him to the death of me.